Let them eat bread. So before we get started, a couple of announcements. One, I think everyone knows what we're talking about today. I'll have 15 minutes while the dough is hydrating to talk about this very important topic. This part of it is not going to be clipped. It's going to be kind of ranty and kind of like this you should be angry at and why. And it's not really super substantive, okay? But this 15-minute portion I'm kind of doing for me. I hope that my expression of my frustration and why, because I'm going to explain it all down to you, is helpful. If for no other reason, then you can also kind of yell at your screen, right? And so, because it's hard. It's very hard, okay? So we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Another important announcement is that all of this that you see around you, this is the last time that I will be shooting in this studio. By this studio, I mean this kitchen, because Let Them Eat Bread is going on a very long hiatus. And the reason is due to a bunch of complications with the house that my partner and dog and I are moving into and having to arrange for temporary living arrangements while the house continues to be built. I just won't have time to film. And also, we're selling a bunch of furniture, including this island. So I really won't have a studio set up to film in any longer either. So this will be the last episode of Let Them Eat Bread for a while, potentially 10 weeks. I will not be doing full episodes. However, just like with other hiatuses, I will sometimes come on just to talk about an issue, go in depth. You guys really do seem to like those. And so I'm going to keep doing those, see if I can get some of those deep dives going on, maybe even have a friend or two on the webcast with me, just to kind of have these conversations in depth. But whole episodes where we make bread and crackers and desserts and all sorts of things together, that's not going to happen for a while. So just so you're aware, right, we're probably looking between 8 and 10, maybe even 12 to 15 weeks between now and our next official episode, but we will still have content coming out, hopefully fairly regularly, where I can just sit down in front of a computer, talk about a subject to you guys from my socialist perspective. So that's another thing, big announcement. I'm going to miss this kitchen. Hopefully you'll miss this kitchen too, but I guarantee you when we shoot our first episode at the new place, you're going to be blown away by just how much nicer it is than what we've got here. And it'll just look better, look brighter and nicer. There'll be a window behind me, so you actually get some nice light as opposed to the window being somewhere where you can't see the light coming from. So hopefully all good things. I'll be working with a larger island, yada, yada. So I'm very excited to move on from this studio, but it is a little sad to be leaving this one. But just so you know, that's why we're not going to be on for a while, because this studio is going away, okay? So that being said, we are going to be making herb crackers. Now you can use any herb combination you want, right? I put in our recipe instructions below what I'm using, but you don't have to. So these herbs here, I have basil, parsley, thyme, rosemary, and sage. I just have a teaspoon of each, okay? And we're going to be very generous with our herbs today. So honestly, whatever herb combination you think is good, you could throw some garlic powder in here too if you want. Literally, these are just kind of like kitchen sink herb crackers. You're making crackers. You want them to taste kind of fun and zesty. There's really no requirement that you even put herbs in all. They could be plain crackers. It literally doesn't matter. So we're just going to go through and make some nice savory crackers and herbs as kind of a farewell to all of us from this studio. And with that said, let's get started.
All right, guys, we're going to start with 150 grams of all-purpose flour. Next up, we're doing equal parts salt and sugar. It's 5 grams each to get our dry ingredients out of the way. Next up, we're adding our water. We have 80 milliliters of water here. And lastly, we have 30 grams of olive oil. I'm using EVU. And next, we're going to put in about 2/3 of our herb mixture. Again, this could be any herb mixture that you want. It really does not matter. Just remember to reserve some for later because we will need to mix it in. Now we are going to start stirring all of our ingredients together. You are essentially just stirring this together until it becomes a giant one cohesive ball. You may need to get your hands involved at some point, and it may take a couple of minutes. And then I'm just going to do a quick fold of each corner onto itself before flipping this over and letting it be covered so that it can fully hydrate in the time that we need it to which is about 15 minutes. So we're just going to cover it with some plastic in a bowl here and get it ready for its hydration, and that'll be about 15 minutes.
All right, so our dough is mixed together. We're just going to let it hydrate more fully here for about 15 minutes. So just, set a timer 15 minutes. If you are here to listen to my frustrations, great. Hopefully it's helpful to you. As I said, this isn't going to be clipped up. So if you're watching this after the fact, essentially you're just going to skip ahead the 15 minutes. But we're going to have 15 minutes here. Set your timer for 15 minutes. And we are going to talk real quick about some things, specifically one thing. And when that's done, we will get to baking. If you are baking this with us, you want to set your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, 220 degrees centigrade now. So it's preheated when we are ready to put our crackers in the oven. All right? That being said, let's start our politics portion. So, Roe v. Wade was struck down officially today. You're watching this, it'll be yesterday, but it's today now. And so, lots of people have had lots of thoughts, and, they're talking about if people have to go camping in certain states and how people are going to have to, I got an email from corporate today saying that our health insurance plan will cover people going to other states for their abortion needs and things like that. So who caused this, right? What I want to do is, because there's a lot of anger out there today, I want to give you more or less a definitive list of who you should be mad at and why, okay? And so I actually think this is a little bit productive because essentially there's going to be a lot of narratives out today and in the following weeks, and especially up to the midterms, about who you should blame and where you should direct that anger, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, where you direct that anger is not so important to me, but it may be important to you. So hopefully, as I break this down for you, you get a sense of who you should be mad at and how to and how not to direct that anger. Okay, so quick caveat. I'm not going to tell you who you should and should not who you should and should not support, or who you should vote for, or what actions you should take. Okay, the purpose of this exercise is just to kind of like level set where should we focus our anger, right? Where should we understand that this movement that culminated in this Supreme Court decision, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, where does that come from? What caused it to be? So the top of our list, obviously, is the Supreme Court, right? The Supreme Court, it has one job, and its job is to interpret the laws of the nation, and to interpret the Constitution, and to decide what is compatible with the Constitution, okay, and to find how the Constitution should be interpreted in today's day and age, okay? So that is its job. And by the way, that job was given to it by itself. That job does not come from the Constitution. I read Article 3 on the show a bunch of weeks back. It doesn't really say what the court's supposed to do. It just says that there will be one, right? And so when it created that power for itself, the rest of government just kind of went along with it. Now, this is not to say that we should take this away from the court, because the ability of courts to interpret laws and things theoretically independently of the judiciary, they are the judiciary, it's a long day, outside of the executive and legislative branches, is actually really important. It's meant to add a check, right? And these institutions are meant to preserve democracy. However, when they stop doing that, they lose their legitimacy. And that's one of the things that is happening with the court right now. So yes, obviously, be mad at the court. They wrote the decision, okay? The next group of individuals that you should be mad at are the Heritage Foundation. What is the Heritage Foundation? The Heritage Foundation is a think tank. I believe they're headquartered in Washington, D.C. Probably got offices on K Street, if I had to guess. And essentially, they lobby for judicial candidates to be presented in front of the president, who then sends them to Congress and whatever. They have a ton of money and a ton of influence. And essentially, they have been shaped by their donors and by their own personal will to want to create a minority-run state. And by state, I mean nation, country, right? So they have been pushing, and not just the federal level too, they've been pushing at other levels as well, other areas of the country, state legislatures and what have you, and they are creating a bench all around the country who will be right-wing doctrinaire, regardless of what the case is, pro-corporate and pro-evangelical. Okay, originally we're just talking pro-corporate, which by the way is bad all by itself, okay? But many of these very, very wealthy individuals are also evangelical Christian. And because they're a minority of the country and they realize that they cannot win elections in a proper democracy without all the bullshit that goes on with this so-called democracy, then they decided that they were going to win their political fights in the courts and literally create activist judges, okay? They have appointed all the famous right-wing justices that you can think of, many of the right-wing judges who end up in front of the Senate and things like that, all come from the Heritage Foundation. And by the way, they even have some pull in the Democratic Party, not as much, very, very little in fact, but there are right-wing Democrats still who, you know, take the Heritage Foundation as some grandiose organization. It's not, it's a right-wing hack job with lots of money and lots of very influential funders who have very specific desires for what the country should look and feel like. So you should direct your anger at them. The next individual that you should be mad at is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is honestly one of the best politicians in terms of his skill and deftness that I can think of. I hate him, and I hate all of his policies. However, he has used his position to maximal effect, to fundamentally recreate the judiciary from the ground up. And he's done this by leveraging his control of the Senate. And I mentioned a long time ago, and I will mention again, that the Senate is inherently an undemocratic and conservative institution. And Mitch McConnell has taken advantage of that for decades to reshape the court system in the image of right-wing fanaticism up to and including the Roe decision. Okay? The next group of individuals that you should be mad at is the Republican Party. Now, why? It's a huge mass of individuals. One, gutting Roe versus Wade has essentially been on the Republican Party's platform for over a decade now. They were talking about this even when they were talking about the Iraq War years and years ago. Essentially, they have seen that it's where very certain parts of their base wants to go. And because we have big tent parties in the US, in order to keep those people who tend to vote in very high percentages voting for them instead of not voting, by the way, let's not delude ourselves that evangelicals are ever going to vote for the Democratic Party, or at least the modern Democratic Party. In order to keep those people voting for Republicans and not sitting out, they have had to give and give and give. And so it became a core part of their platform to strip women of their right to a non-controversial piece of healthcare, which is an abortion. Abortions are non-controversial in any country but this one. They are simply a healthcare procedure. It is fascinatingly stupid how difficult we make it for women to just get reproductive health care in this country, period, let alone the abortion question. So you should be mad at them because they have created whole campaigns around and set the agenda, set the talking points, set the ideological discussion about abortion from the national level back down. So they have reflected the small portion of their base. It was amplified up to the party level, and the party level made it part of their platform and then made it salient back down. By the way, there's some political science behind this, but I don't have the articles in front of me, and I'm too frustrated to think. So that's the next group of people that you want to get angry at. And now we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations. The next group of people that you should be mad at is the Democratic Party. Now, why is this? They always talk about how much they love abortion. Yeah, they also talk about how much they love Black Lives Matter and love lowering prescription drug prices and love the environment and love a shit ton of things. But you know what? They never do anything. The Democratic Party is the single most feckless political unit that I can think of. They have not done anything. They had the ability to codify Roe versus Wade, and every right that the Constitution, that the Supreme Court is now going to be looking at striking down, Democrats could pass into law. They could just do it. They have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the presidency. They could pass a fucking law and it would be done. Okay? But they're unwilling to do that. Why? Because two senators, your next two people you should be mad at, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, refused to have the filibuster abolished. But actually, it's not just them. They are the figures that everyone else who's a corporate Democrat stands behind. Because here's what they know that happens, okay? If you abolish the filibuster and you make the Senate a working arm of the U.S. government instead of a place where everything goes to die except for tax breaks, corporate subsidies, and the military budget, you know what happens? People start to expect they're going to do things. And so that filibuster is an easy and convenient excuse for them to not do anything. And so they don't do anything. Right? If it wasn't Kyrsten Sinema and Manchin, it would be someone else. It would be Chris Coons. It would be any one of these stupid corporate Democrats who refuse to do anything, who like to taunt and fundraise off of these issues. By the way, it gets me to the next thing that you should be mad at, who fundraise off these issues because they know the base believe it, but they don't give a fucking shit about what we believe because they're never, ever, ever going to pass something. There are lots of people protest right now, and I am incredibly proud of them for going to protest and showing that we will not be dragged back 50 years to a place where women are getting killed for a piece of healthcare that is uncontroversial in any country but this one. And I'm incredibly proud of those people who are out there protesting, who are showing the government that we will not be silent as our rights and our privileges are stripped away from us. But no one in the Senate chamber, except for maybe one Bernie Sanders, is listening and giving a damn about anything that's going on in any of these streets in the United States. Because they refuse to abolish the filibuster, because they are afraid that once they do, what's going to happen is the American people are going to actually expect the Democrats to do anything. Raise the minimum wage, tax corporations fairly, save the environment, pass a Green New Deal, give us all health care, give us all mental health care, make sure that Medicare covers dental and eyesight and all the things that it should cover because they're fucking health care. So, and by the way, that leads me, and I've got a very special person coming in last here, but the next group, or the next thing that you should be mad at is money in politics. Because at the very bottom of every problem that America experiences, every single one, left, right, center, it doesn't matter what ideology you have, if you disagree with something America's doing, I can guarantee there's a corporation or a wealthy person, we're talking millionaires and billionaires here, benefiting from or demanding that change through campaign contributions, which are bribes. Because here's what happens, okay? You give a campaign contribution to someone, and then they answer your call later because they know who their donors are. Joe Manchin went on TV to pretend that anybody didn't know who his donors were. Either he's the dumbest man alive, or he's a fucking liar. And I am positive that he's a liar. By the way, these Congress people, they own stocks. They're allowed to own corporations. Jimmy Carter had to give up his peanut farm because there was a concern about corruption. Joe Manchin owns a coal company, and he sits on the committee in the Senate that has to do with environmental regulation. Oh, it's really convenient that nothing ever gets through there. Maybe because there's a fucking coal baron on the committee. So money in politics, which not only can you be an outsider influence politics through your money, you can be an insider influence politics through your money. You can actually make money. This is money in politics too, by the way, not just, even the stock trading, all this stuff. You can make money being a congressperson. You play the field right. Nancy Pelosi, she's doing great financially because she plays the field based on what she knows because she's in Congress. She can have those privately owned stocks. She can make individual stock decisions. And by the way, without money in politics, Roe versus Wade would never have been overturned. Never. Because those interest groups who are in favor of Roe versus Wade being overturned, of Obergefell v. Hodges being overturned, of anything that you can think of being overturned, hell, maybe they'll overturn Plessy for fuck's sake. But all of those interest groups are money driven. Money to politicians, dirty money, given to politicians who take those bribes, answer those phone calls, and do whatever they say because they're obsessed with power. And that power allows them to gain wealth because they're not regulated based on the money that they can extract from the system based on their insider knowledge. So the last person that you should be mad at, and I hope y'all knew this was coming, is Joseph Robinette Biden. And I'll tell you why. Joe Biden could have used his influence as president to go down to Arizona, go down to West Virginia, and hold rallies throughout the entire state, demanding that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema pass things like Roe into law. Make an exception for the filibuster for just Roe, or just gun violence, or whatever it was. Joe Biden could have gone down there. He could have put on his walking shoes, in the words of Barack Obama, and actually made it difficult for Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to hold their positions without squirming. And if another two senators came up, he'd go to their states too. At one point, this president was popular. He could have used that popularity to leverage the things to protect women who are going to suffer today and for years to come. Not only that, he could have signed executive orders, making it so that abortion is included in Medicare or Medicaid, without exception to the rule of the state. By the way, supremacy clause. Now, is it legal that he can do that? I don't know. I haven't done the research into those particular laws, but I'll tell you what, it takes years to fight these things through the court. Then you make the courts unpopular and illegitimate by striking them down. He had so many options. He could have used the dirt that he had on Joe Manchin's daughter, because she was running a scam out of a pharmaceutical company, to say, look, we will arrest your daughter for the crimes that she has actually committed. You have dead rights in emails if you don't vote to get Roe, if you don't work to get Roe codified into law. Biden had options. He got up there today in his speech in front of the White House and effectively threw his hands up and saying, I know you're frustrated, but there's nothing we can do. Every time something terrible happens to this country on his watch, he throws his hands up and says, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. There's a ton of things I can do. In fact, what I wanted to dedicate today's whole damn show to was things that he could do. But now I have to talk about who you have to direct your anger out, because half this country, perhaps more, just lost their right to an abortion. A basic, uncontroversial piece of health care. Joe Biden is either going to be remembered at best as the do-nothing president, or worse, as the red carpet to fascism in this country. Evangelical, Christian, theocratic fascism. Because when the right continues to push for authoritarianism, attempts to steal the elections in a coup, and what we're seeing with the January 6th insurrection, how deep the coup really was, and Democrats talking about not taking action against Trump, not taking action against some of these high-level people who were planning on undermining our foundation of government, the American experiment. That is opening the red carpet for authoritarian regimes. The right is heading there. They have been for a while. They're appealing to a minority of their base, and the party is then reflecting that minoritarian view back on the rest of the party, who are using anything they can to stay in power. These people know they cannot win in fair elections, because if you look at the popularity of any one of these things that the Supreme Court is doing, it is underwater. Separation of church and state, huge percentage of people support it. Roe versus Wade, huge percent of people support it. But the right has had a coordinated strategy using money in politics and using their influence to create the situation that we see in front of us today. So, Joe Biden is never going to hear this video. Fine. But Joe Biden, if you are listening, or anyone that you know is And if you do something, then we, the American people, will know that you care about this. But when you inevitably don't do anything, when you give up before you even tried, we, the American people, the 70+% of people who are in favor of Roe versus Wade and the restrictions that it creates, will know that you are an empty vessel, a shell, a useless politician. And you, more importantly, perhaps most importantly, that you've never cared about this issue. Not one day. You want to blame Trump? You can blame Trump too, but McConnell's really the nexus of that because he got all the Supreme Court justices in. Trump was just a puppet for McConnell and the Heritage Foundation. I'm so mad. I don't know what's next, but it's not looking good. I want the Supreme Court to be a legitimate body that does things the right way, that does things that make sense, that move us forward, that translate the Constitution for the modern age. I'm a lawyer. I believe in courts. Okay, maybe it's flawed of me, right? I still think even in a socialist utopia, the type of the world that I would want to live in, I still think you need courts. I still think you need foundational documents and principles and values and pieces of law that cannot just simply be revoked because the majority changes their mind on it. Protections for minorities, for example, is an excellent place where I think that constitutions and courts are important places. But the courts are fundamentally undermining their obligation to this country and to the people who live in it. The right wing has won what it wanted today. This has been a project that has been in the works for decades. So now you know who to be angry at. Now you know who specifically allowed this to happen. And there are lots of things that you can do. The last thing I want to say on this, and this is important, okay? The state is committing violence against us, all of us, today, but women especially. Do not fight their violence with violence, because no one who sees your violence is going to remember that you're reacting to their violence. It's going to be a long couple of weeks. But don't give in to that instinct. A political revolution is possible in this country. A nonviolent political revolution is possible in this country. When Bernie Sanders talks about a political revolution, he's talking about the ballot box. He's talking about fundamentally changing the economics of this country, making it so that we never have to worry about these types of issues again. Making our country a better, safer, fairer, and more free place. Believe in that revolution. We can still win that way. It's looking bleak, and I'm angry, and you're angry. But don't let that anger consume you. It will only seek to drive the right's purpose and to make their authoritarianism look more justified.
We are taking our parchment, which is slightly larger than our baking sheet, and we are thoroughly flouring it. You might want to do 2 or 3 passes here. I'm just putting a thick layer of flour down. Next up, we are also going to flour our dough as soon as I can figure out how to get it out of the bowl and onto our thing here. Right, so we're going to flour the top of this just to make sure nothing sticks, and we're also going to flour our rolling pin, keeping in mind that this will be another way that we stop things from sticking. After that, we are just going to press it out in every which direction we possibly can. Leave yourself a little bit of a border here to make sure that you actually don't have crackers larger than your tray, but don't worry about it if you do. It just means they'll turn up a little bit and you can always snap those pieces off. And truthfully, crackers are almost never going to be perfect when made by hand like this, so don't fret in the slightest. Just make sure that everything is nice and thin and that your herbs are ready for the next step. So now we're going to take our remaining herbs and put them in into our crackers, and we're just going to roll them in with our rolling pin just to make sure that they are as much as possible baked in, literally in this case, and just making sure that they're all close to the surface. We're now using a pizza cutter to prepare this. And we are just cutting as many crackers as we want, whatever size you want. I did about 1.5 inches to 1.5 inches. Once this is done, we're going to slide this onto our tray and set it in the oven for 14 minutes. Now rotate it after 7 just to make sure that we have even coverage on both sides. And we're done. Look at that.
All right, so our crackers are done, and they look beautiful, but, and is a little bit embarrassing, I did make one rookie mistake. And I'm going to hold one of these up to the camera. Ooh, it's very hot. Actually, I'm not going to hold it up to the camera. Whew, goodness. My rookie mistake is I forgot to poke holes in them. So some of them, like this one here, has a giant bubble. But that's okay. They will be delicious anyway. They're not going to be perfectly flat, but that's okay. They're going to be wonderful and delicious and a great way to send off this particular studio. So for all of you who've been following since I started my journey, thank you. Hold, right? Because we're going to come back and we're going to do great things in the new kitchen. But meanwhile, farewell. See you soon. Goodbye to this kitchen studio. It's been fun. Looking forward to bigger and better studios in the future. All right, guys, that is it for this week's episode. I will see you next time on Let Me Eat Bread for our next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye for now.